All right, guys, in this video, I want to talk about a mistake that you don't want to make at the beginning of your training blocks in powerlifting. So in lots of modern powerlifting programs, people don't really do a traditional deload week. It is going to usually be some sort of a wave load into a week one of, say, a 4 or a 5 week block, which is usually the average length of a training block that most people are going to go under. And usually, how most powerlifting programs are structured is that it's an ascending RPE style. So say week one is like RPE 5, week 2 is RPE 6, week 3 is RPE 7, and then week 4 is going to be, say, RPE 8, 9, 10, whatever. Just the heaviest week of training is going to be that last one. I am going to argue that the most important weeks of training are actually going to be those early weeks of training. And in particular, one of the biggest mistakes I see people making is on that transition from a week 4 to a week 1. They do not lower down the weight enough to where the bar speed is really, really, really fast. It's really, really important for bar speed to be very, very fast at the beginning of a training block, because that is the only way that you're actually going to be able to drop fatigue. And one important principle to understand too is that, say if you're taking, your max deadlift is 700 pounds for a single, and you start off a training block with, say, 540 pounds at the beginning of a training block. And that's going to be pretty light, it's usually going to be, under an RPE 5. Well, the reality is that the only way you can actually move that 540 pounds at like a sub 5 RPE is because you're producing the same amount of force that you would if it was your max on the bar. So you're still getting a really, really great strength stimulus and getting maximal motor unit recruitment, but with significantly less fatigue. And we want to start off our training blocks very, very fast. Like it should be like, I'd always tell my clients it should look like RPE 0 when I am looking at your week ones. And then ideally, when we are pacing ourselves throughout a training block, I want to have the minimum bar speed slowdown possible on a week-to-week basis, because that tells me two things. Number one, we are adding weight at the same rate that is matching our adaptation rate, and we do not want to exceed that. Usually going from week 1 into week 2, I want the weight to feel perceptually easier to the client and ideally actually move a little bit faster, because that tells me we are actually adapting, the fatigue is lower, and we can probably go a little bit higher in our weight increase next week to match that rate of adaptation. And this is just really, really important because we want to set ourselves up for that week 4 of training. And we on, say, like week 3 or the second to last week of training, we're just trying to find the minimum threshold stimulus that we need to be able to set ourselves up for a PR on our final week of training. So usually for most people, this is going to be anywhere in between 89 to 93% of the end of block goal weights, going from like, the second to last week of training into the last week of training. And so, usually this might take a little bit of time to like reverse engineer, but as a general rule of thumb, I like basically saying, okay, if I know that my athlete's anchor percentage going from week 3 into a week 4, or say, that in the case of a 4-week block, I'm going to have probably going 80% of the goal weight, 85%, then 90%, or something similar to that, as just a starting spot for the percentage I'm going to work off of. But again, this is just going to depend on the athlete that you're working with. Some athletes get really, really, really beat up from top end intensities, and they need to lower down the weight more. That is totally fine. All that matters is that you are able to eventually end up at that anchor percentage going into your last week of training, where you are going to be strong. It doesn't really matter, whatever, how light you're starting. Obviously, you don't want to be too light, you don't want to detrain too much, but in most cases, that's not going to happen with some sort of an intelligent ramp in structure. So again, don't make the mistake of going too heavy on your week ones. We want to actually drop fatigue. We want that to be fast. And then when we are progressing weight throughout a training block, we want to do our best to match that bar speed as much as possible in order for us to be strong, actually build strength with less fatigue throughout our training block, so that we can actually have a good and strong week final week of training, where we can actually set a PR. And then one important thing I think is just important to mention during this is, like, still push your accessories hard during this time. I think it's really important that while you're doing these lighter SBD sessions, or squat, bench, deadlift training in general on your accumulation of your block, that you're still pushing those accessories, because that's going to help you hold on to fitness, the ability to lift heavy weights later on in the training block. And if you are going hard, say RPE 8, 9, 10 on your accessories on week 1, you could even just chill there for the rest of the block, not add any weights, but that should be getting easier over time. And as you're adding weights to your main movements, the squat, bench, and deadlift, that's going to also help manage fatigue, because sometimes it can be really, really hard to like progress everything throughout a training block. And if you're finding that, say, your systemic fatigue, so like you just feel super tired, especially like when you start to add weights on the SBD, we felt fine like the week 1 because you weren't really progressing that much, and you're trying to like progress your accessories and your SBD, it might be a really good idea to just not add any weight until like the start of the next block, and add like maybe like 3 to 5% onto that next block and just milk it out. This is really just going to help you out with pacing your blocks better, so you can have the most predictable results at the end of a training block, be able to be as strong as possible. So hopefully this makes sense. If you guys have any questions, ask down in the comments below. If you guys are interested in coaching, so I can help you reach your genetic potential with your strength and your physique goals, links are also down below for coaching. So I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.